Todd, I'm so excited to talk to you about your incredible career as CEO of the iconic Australia's Wonderland. I think everybody has good memories about Wonderland, but also then Sydney's BridgeClimb. But I want to go back to the beginning. Like, where did it all start?
I was one of those guys, Alicia, who actually never knew what he wanted to be when he grew up, and actually still don't, to be honest.
Still searching.
Still searching. When I left school, I had no idea, and I ended up doing an arts degree and majoring in theatre studies, which was a really weird thing unusual for an introvert to be doing. But I got into acting, and then I realised I needed to get a job to pay for the rent, right?
Yeah.
And
otherwise be a starving actor.
Starving actor, and also pay for the booze bill and so on. I got this job at Luna Park in Sydney, and they had just reopened after the fire in 1979. This was 82. And I got a job as a ride operator, and I thought this might be a bit of fun. But you know what? I just fell in love with the park. I fell in love with the whole idea of creating fun for people. And being in rides, there was this real logistics and process and systemization around it. So there was incredibly disciplined and incredibly rigorous, but you created these great outcomes for people. So I guess I just fell in love with that, and then realised pretty quickly that, having did a little bit of acting, realised, okay, you're not going to be the next Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah.
Right. So first moment of self-awareness.
Yeah.
check. There's the self-awareness, and it just kind of went on from there. End of university came. They were building Australia's Wonderland in Western Sydney, and I just thought it was 8 months before they opened, and I just thought, I'm going to go for a job there. And assistant rides manager, bang. So from Luna Park to Australia's Wonderland, and then it kind of just
progressed.
It just happened.
What kept you in the industry? Because you've always sort of stayed in that industry.
It was that very first thing when I first came to Luna Park about being in an industry where you created such a positive impact for people. When I got into the major theme park, and Wonderland was a big theme park.
Yeah.
They could hold up to 10,000 people a day, and they did. It was actually like working in a small town. Everything you can imagine was there. There was food, beverage, there was rides, there was entertainment, there was security, loss prevention, maintenance, merchandise, all these different things. Big productions, big one-off events. It was the absolute variety of that, and very smart managers there, leaders who made sure that you worked in a lot of different departments.
So you got a lot of different type of experience.
It was wonderful. It was kind of like doing a masters of attractions.
Yeah.
It was always incredibly hard work. You always worked weekends. There was always some special event going on that requires you to put in extra, but it was always new. It was always fresh. It was always changing.
So what was the key to you progressing through the company? Because you did sort of move through into management during your time. Very
quickly, I joined Wonderland as the assistant rides manager, and eventually became director of operations after the Australian Wildlife Park had opened, and then from there to CEO. I remember the first year I was there in 85, and the managing director, who was from America, who'd opened the park, he left after a year, and he came up to me at the farewell, and I was a 23-year-old rides manager, and he just came up to me and he looked me in the eye, he shook my hand, and he said, Todd, I can't really do the accent.
Todd, yeah.
Todd. He said, Todd, one day you're going to run this place.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
No way, at 23.
At 23, I'm not kidding. I never really had a plan to become a CEO or even a director of operations. I think that as each role came on, it was accretive and additive, and you just took on the additional responsibility, learned and kept going. It became a self-perpetuating machine, I guess.
And I've heard you sort of, as a quote from you, and it's key to disrupting yourself. Was that really a key ingredient for you to keep challenging yourself and taking on new opportunities?
Yeah, it was. And consciously or unconsciously, I could recognise when I was becoming stale, and I actually could become stale in one of those management roles within a year or two. And the first time I did it to myself was in 1988. I actually left Wonderland after being there for 3.5 years and went to lead a the operations side of a project that was building in Darling Harbour. And it was a complete step out of my comfort zone. In the end, it didn't work out. And then it was Wonderland who called and said, come back, we'd like you to do a different job. So there was always that process. And then when I became a CEO, the park was actually sold to a Malaysian company. We worked together for a year, but I didn't sense there was an alignment in their values and my values and even the values of our team. So again, I became restless and hence it was in that moment that I met Paul Cave, the founder of BridgeClimb.
Tell me about meeting Paul Cave, because I know it's a really pivotal sort of moment for you.
Look, it was stunning. And straight up, what Paul did in creating that business is something, I couldn't even imagine having that skill, that entrepreneurial part. So it was one of those realizations for me, gee, you really are best as an operator. Entrepreneurs who can create something from nothing, and in Paul's case, can see something that no one else could see.
Yeah.
And never gave it up, and worked at it for 10 years, and had 43 financial institutions tell him and his founding shareholder group, no, we won't back this, and still to keep going. And when I met him, he had been at it for 8 years. And I recall after I met him thinking, I'm very plugged into this industry, but I knew nothing about this. And he'd been working on it for 8 years. That's how top secret it had been. And I was just stunned by I'd never met an entrepreneur quite like that. And his passion and centered around the bridge. And it was a very clear sense of what it could be. And I had a really strong sense after walking away from him that first meeting of, this is not something that can fail. This actually must succeed, because I came from an industry where there'd been a lot of failure in the attractions industry. And I just had this strong sense after everything he's put into this absolutely must be made to work.
But why did you think it could work when he'd faced, 8 years of setbacks? What did you see the spark there?
When I met him, he had Paul and his small team together. They'd secured the master agreement, and they were actually then beyond that, and they were in the process of creating the business. And Paul had reached a point as the entrepreneur where he had understood that it wasn't his job to make it happen. He was the entrepreneur.
He was the ideas man. He had the concept, yeah.
Kind of the outside person, and that he needed to find an inside person. He needed to find an operator, a partner. It was that yin and yang.
Yep.
Steve Jobs, Wozniacki. It's that classic combination.
They've got to complement each other.
Exactly.
But as a founder, he's actually recognised, and sometimes founders struggle with that. They go, no, I need to be there to the very end, whereas there's a level of humility to actually go, I am not the right man to take it to the next step.
And Paul has an incredible level of humility about him, and I also think too, though, that he would say, and that's a separate story, I guess, but he would say that he needed to be kicked upstairs, and he had a couple of wise shareholders who were with him who actually said, Paul, you need to change your role and your position in the business, become the chairman.
Nice.
And bring in the operator. This was something that had never been done in the world before. The bridge itself, the power of the bridge itself, the Governor of New South Wales called it a bridge of its time, which is now a bridge for all time. UNESCO labelled it one of 5 bridges worldwide which define the spirit and character of a people or place,
Wow.
It was that.
Yeah.
And there was a sense too, I guess I'd learned from all the mistakes we'd made at Wonderland.
So you had to take the bridge from being a postcard to a bucket list experience. I've heard you talk about that, which I just think is incredible. What was key to making that transition for the bridge?
Between Paul and myself, and in all these conversations, Alicia, some just amazing people who were with us. It was about what that small group did together, and I was part of that. And maybe I had the ability to be the conductor in the middle of the orchestra, but it was about superb musicians all around. But what I think we did was there was a really strong focus on why. What's our purpose going to be? So the value of BridgeClimb exists in its fundamentals. Its purpose, which we all agreed would be to make a hero of the bridge and a hero of every customer.
Nice.
Real clarity around what we wanted to be in our vision, which was we really wanted to be the ultimate experience of Sydney. And what does that mean? And real clarity around what we did. We recruited people who believed what we believed. We were incredibly rigorous around standards, and it was relentlessly customer focused. It was relentlessly listening to customers and thinking about how to improve. But the thing which drove us, those fundamentals, if you I guess what we tried to create every day, and we learned very quickly we could, was memories, shared memories for customers that would last a lifetime. The moment they spent on the bridge with a partner, with a child, with someone who was visiting them from London or had come from across the world to be in Sydney, you could actually do something there that they'd remember for the rest of their life. The last piece, I think it was BridgeClimb's, one of its real points of difference was logistics is the experience. Oh. So all the stuff you do at the airport.
But how did you do that? How did you make the logistics stuff interesting?
Well, we'd learned in attractions about workflows, and Disney and others were past masters of this, and how you can actually turn a workflow, or basically the flow of an experience, into experience, and how you can create little peak moments all along the way. So that all along the way there's a little high point, then you move to the next high point and so on. Yeah. So it was really about thinking about what we ended up calling experiential workflow, and just really honing that craft and making it something that was really unique to us.
That's great. It's making the experience totally end to end, from the moment you walk in the door to the moment you take your gear off.
To the moment you leave.
BridgeClimb grew to 250 people. And that you've had to go out and hire and recruit and retain people. What was a key ingredient you were looking for in doing that growth?
We knew people would come for the bridge. We knew the bridge would inspire people to climb. But like when you see a movie and there's something in the trailer, there's something in the movie you didn't see in the trailer, something that surprises you, something really great. The thing that people didn't expect was the experience that the team gave them, the personalities of those team members. So I think the key to that was we looked for people who believed what we believed about the bridge. They shared the same passion for Sydney. They shared the same passion for customers. And that they believed what we believed. We hired on personality and values. We trained the skills. Yeah. Because we were doing something that no one else was doing in any case. So we became very good at training competency, but hiring on personality and belief. It was a strong culture. It didn't suit everybody.
Yep. And that's the way with a lot of really strong cultures, where it's very clear. People are either attracted to it and great, this is the place for me, or they go, oh no, actually that's not right.
That's not right. And the ones who believe, then they actually became champions of the culture themselves. And they actually created the culture to a great degree themselves as well.
And how did you find keeping that level of momentum with staff? Because often you get people in and they're really good and then they feel exhausted by the work, because at the end of the day it's still quite an intense job, going out and climbing the bridge all day, doing same thing but having a level of energy. How did you keep it fresh and engaging for them?
Team members working in photographics or in climate relations, and then of course the climb leaders who would do their job in any conditions,
rain, hail, shine. Yeah.
Because we had made a very early decision that weather would be the experience, the weather was the experience, and so they had all that extra energy. So I think what worked was coming back to the central purpose and cause again, and reminding our team all the time, as best as we could, by drawing out stories from them, what this was all about. Celebrating, because there was always every day there was an amazing customer story. So it was celebrating those stories and then celebrating the team members who created those. It was having and initially it was unconscious, but this culture of celebration ended up being built into rituals, really simple rituals, monthly celebration hours where people would come and just share, and their job was to celebrate others in the team and share successes with others as well. I think it was really important to find people doing right, and certainly as a leader,
rewarding the positive behaviour. And certainly I really felt very conscious in all my time there that every day it was part of my responsibility to make sure every day I found 2, 3, 4, 5 things that had gone right, and then
make sure they were recognised myself and model that, and then then other leaders would do the same thing, and it became again a self-perpetuating machine. Part of it, though, the balancing part, was that there was real rigour and discipline around standards, in particular safety, in particular around things like not seeing a complaint as a complaint, seeing it as an opportunity to learn something. Here is a customer who has actually gone to the trouble to teach us. What can we learn from them? So in many senses, I said, weather is experience. It was trying to reverse the lens a bit by always keeping the focus on the customer, on being very rigorous about the outcomes we provided for them. Then that was actually part of creating a high performance feel. So it was partially about celebration, but it wasn't all soft and fuzzy. Yeah. It was also, we are high performance. We hold ourselves to those standards and we enforce those standards.
How do you think your leadership style impacted that culture? Because not all leaders naturally go out and celebrate success and celebrate teams, and I know that's a big part of what drives you and what motivates you is team, right? And also around discipline and, you know, protecting the company from risk. That's a big part of you. How do you think that then was a good fit for the company?
I'm certainly not the extroverted, charismatic type leader. Well, Alicia, you know, you're very familiar with my profile. I am quite introverted. I'm quite thoughtful. I think what I bring to that is it's about everyone else's success for me. And I think one thing that an introverted type of leader can bring is a quiet will about some things. In particular, those things that we've spoken about, the importance of foundations, of those central foundations, the importance of rigour around the process. It's been an interesting self-reflection for me, but I actually look back on my career and think, yeah, you had a really quiet will around those things. Persistence around those things.
Calm, patient and persistent.
Yeah, and it was actually a really important thing in our business to have that type of leadership style. We had been founded by this extraordinary entrepreneur, Paul Cave, and a really big part of BridgeClimb was actually the mythology around that story of how the business came to be and the values that we had taken on from Paul. So Paul was very much the story of the business, quite rightly so. And our team members were the story. For the customers, the most important person to them was their client leader. And then the people they met in the base all the way through. All of the rest of us were in support roles. It's really interesting. I think in the early part of my career when I started in rides operations, it was very much command and control. But by the time I'd been blooded and fallen over a few times and had gone through a number of different roles, I think it became much more about being in service. And I really resonate with that idea that you're actually in service as a leader, and the more responsibility you have, or the more things you're in service to. And it becomes something quite important to focus on. And if you're in service, it does become about the customer, the team. What's this all about? And then you bring your introversion and your quiet, reflective thinking and all your evidence stuff to really identifying what is important.
But I think it's really interesting because I think a lot of people, as you said earlier, think of that, you know, leader, CEO of the business, they have to be an extrovert, they've got to be a very dominant individual, very proactive, a little bit command control style of persuasive, gregarious. People have that sort of perception, but that's actually not the right environment, especially for an organisation that is built around safety. You think about BridgeClimb, safety first, right? Is the concept nothing must fall?
Nothing shall fall, which becomes a simple principle that you can give people a cause for safety. Sometimes the struggle with getting a strong safety culture is just creating the strong purpose, reason, cause around that so that people actually want to give their personal responsibility and accountability to it. So for us, it was nothing shall fall. Because if something fell,
it could hit a car, it could hit a person, it could kill someone.
Really serious implications. organisations.
Yeah, so someone of your profile who is more cautious, thoughtful, meticulous, that's absolutely a beautiful profile for that style of environment.
And you know, when we did the predictive index and you spoke to me about my profile, that was actually quite an illuminating moment for me, that I'd always thought that perhaps negatively that I was perhaps a little bit risk adverse, but it was really interesting to hear it described as you're protective.
You're protective.
Protective.
Yes.
I want to protect the company, protect others, keep people safe. It reminded me a little bit of Michael, the footballer from The Blind Side.
Oh, yes.
You know, who registered not to that degree, but it certainly helped me put some of myself into a different perspective in a positive way.
You obviously went on as the CEO of BridgeClimb, and now you're actually a coach and a mentor to many CEOs through the tech community. What's been some big learnings for you now, actually going out and supporting and coaching and mentoring other CEOs?
I'm quite humbled by the people that I'm working with who've all achieved incredible things in their own right, and feel after a lifetime of service as a CEO, actually this is a really ultimate expression of service in helping other people to grow, helping them to become more effective, giving them a place to be challenged, giving them a place to be held accountable where they might not be otherwise.
Which they need to, right? To be held accountable.
They need to be held accountable, and I was very fortunate quite early in my own leadership career to start with the Executive Connection myself as a member. For myself, after spending 23 years as a CEO, working with and learning from so many people around me who are all champions themselves, learning from mentors, but only having done that for one organisation at a time, to actually be able now to apply that and do that with 15, 20, 30, who knows, maybe eventually 40 different organisations at a time. It's incredibly rewarding, and you feel like you're doing something useful with everything that you've learned and earned. So yes, there's that give back, but you're actually just able to make a really positive impact.
And what are you finding is sort of the commonality across, because once you get this perspective, right, across multiple organizations, what do you think that the commonality is between all these CEOs and all the organizations? What's a common thing they all face?
I think that issue of accountability to themselves and holding themselves accountable, more than anything else, they want to be better leaders. They want to be better for their people. They want to create better organizations. I've been really quite humbled by the leaders I've met, owners, professional CEOs, who actually want their organizations to make a positive impact. They want to make a positive impact on the lives of their teams. And you see so much higher motivation in what these CEOs and owners are wanting to achieve. And it's, in many ways, it's the leaders I've worked with, it's so different, so much more positive, so much more in service than perhaps some of the stereotypical pictures of CEOs as being extroverts and as being bosses with no bosses, and people who have all the answers.
Yeah, because you're seeing the other side of it, right? You've been there, but also now you're seeing their journey as well. Their journey as well,
and they've been on a journey as well, just as the one that I described for myself. So it's incredibly humbling, it's incredibly rewarding, and there's a great, again, back to my background, there's a great joy in the process and discipline of actually helping people to become more effective themselves and their businesses.
And what do you think is the most common challenge they're all facing during COVID? Because there's a lot of the CEOs I'm talking to, it's about, some of them are facing decision-making fatigue. Just the amount of decisions they're having to make at the moment is so significant. What are you seeing across the space?
So many businesses, and they're all in different spaces, right? And in some cases, there are businesses who are overwhelmed with the amount of opportunity they've had. It's the reverse situation. But you do see and you do experience the resilience, the fatigue. These owners and CEOs I work with feel so much responsibility and accountability to their own teams. And so they're burning themselves very, very hard to achieve that. I think most, and indeed tech has been very helpful with this, are realising that if you're going to help your teams effectively, then you've got to exercise great self-care yourself. You have to have great self-care routines. Beyond that, the sorts of things that they're focusing on that are so important for their people is creating certainty for their teams in the short term, certainty around what's our cause, what's our focus this week, next month, giving people that Covey's circle of control, giving people a sense and making it clear for them what they can control, being really transparent and upfront. It's probably one of the positive things in the organisations I work with is there's a lot more transparency than there even was before now, in having all of those different types of conversations.
It is hard to plan often beyond that, but getting down to what is controllable, what is in that realm, and getting them to focus on those things, but also having them focus for CEOs and leaders on their health and their own rituals and habits.
Yes.
I think because if they're not looking after themselves, they can't go out and look after the hundreds of all these souls that they look after. Yes. They can't give that service back.
Yes, very important. There's also this, and they need that energy because I think another thing that they all face culturally within their cultures, the way we do things around here, is compared to pre-COVID, they've got parents, non-parent team members who are all facing actually quite different challenges. They've got some people who are remote, some people who are not remote, and the degree of listening and actually understanding, okay, where are our people at and what do we actually have to do in our culture to be agile and adapt to the fact that our team members are facing some pretty difficult pressures and different pressures amongst the group. So you've got to have high energy and the high ability to be present and focused to do all those things, plus manage their own stakeholders, their own shareholders, and all of the commercial needs of their business.
Because they are still managing up and managing down.
They are.
It's a lot more complicated than I think people think sometimes.
It is a lot more complicated, and that's not without taking away that it is equally complicated for their team members. So for the leader, their responsibility is you need to be match fit. You need to be in a good place yourself. You need to be taking care of yourself so that you can be in service to those people effectively.
Are you doing much self-care stuff for your tech group?
Yeah, we are. It's a conversation we have every month, and we do a sign-in where we would traditionally score ourselves on how are things in your personal life, how are things in your business life. We've added another one now, which is where are you with self-care? And it's actually
that's good.
Yeah, it's actually
that's
one
very
of the ones.
good because they're all going to fail on it.
And actually, there's the group is getting quite spirited about holding each other really accountable. Okay, you're a 3 out of 10. What have you done?
Yeah, what are you not doing?
What are you not doing? Because it's for sure and for certain nobody else is going to actually grill them about that.
No.
I remember one of the areas you spoke to me about was what do you do in the downtime to make sure that you can be at your best in the uptime? And it can be dangerous for anyone in any responsible position, middle management, upper management, it doesn't matter. That you've absolutely got to think about what is my downtime?
How do I spend it?
How do I spend it? We spoke about when I was CEO, the 30 minutes on the ferry each way from work was the third place. That was where you deliberately switched off. Having great exercise. I mean, I stupidly ran a marathon a couple of times and then I broke down. My body broke down, so now I swim. But there's still something that gives that space. And finally, and I've got to get it, it was inevitable that I would raise this. The Sydney Swans community, the football club that my wife and I are passionately part of, that gives us a tribe that we can be part of.
Outside of your own family.
Outside of our own family and outside of our own workspaces, and appreciate what it's like to be part of a strong tribe so that we can bring that back to our work.
And how do you recommend people go about finding what that energy source is for them? Because I think sometimes people struggle finding, well, what should I do? What's the right thing for me to gain energy?
Great place to start is with your own family. The kids for us are still a central source of joy, and all those other emotions that come with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Heartache, pain,
they're essential.
stress.
Absolutely, but they're a central source of purpose, as is our immediate family. And then beyond that, they're probably actually, it has to be a rigor about it, just as you are at work. You've actually got to say, right, I am going to spend 5 minutes a day just sitting quietly. I am going to go for a walk for half an hour. For all those Zoomers out there, and we've all done plenty of it, there's got to be, you can't do back-to-back Zoom meetings. You've got to schedule in 10 minutes to walk around. You've got to spend an hour in the middle of the day just doing something else. So like everything else, there's a discipline, accountability and a rigor to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and click the notification button so you get regular updates on our new content. And if you want to know what drives and motivates you, feel free to share this video in your network and click the link in the description and take the free Predictive Index behavioural assessment and find out what drives and motivates you at work.